chapter 6 chapter 6 of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is titled Pig and Paper. Why it is titled so? Because ultimately what we find, there is this alliteration obviously, but what we find here is that at the end of this chapter we will find the baby that is being held or thought to be a baby is actually a pig, and the paper was actually creating the sneezing. Okay, so before going into this story in detail, um, I should tell you about the oracle. Okay, so oracle of Delphi you have already heard, right? So it was a divine spot or a divine sanctuary where the god of prophecy, that is Apollo, who is a god of prophecy, used to give the most uh, sought after premonitions, not premonitions rather, but it gave us hints, or it gave us ways through which people could choose their path, right? So why is it important? It is important from the perspective of the kitchen that will be described over here. Okay, so um, this prophecy, this Delphic oracle, uh, has this comic allusions of the Delphic oracle in the political pamphlets. Okay, that Lewis Carroll was dealt, that Lewis Carroll was focused in. Okay, so what we find here is that this oracle of Delphi has this similar kind of existence, similar kind of linkage with the kitchen, or the kitchen has similar kind of linkage with the oracle. Clear? So let's begin the story of chapter 6. What happens there after roaming into the woods? um Alice sees that a fish is in the form of a human being. Okay, so the upper part of the fish is in the form of a fish, and the lower part is that of a human being. So it has two legs. Clear? And it is wearing a livery, that is an uniform, and it is approaching a house. It knocks at the door, and similarly dressed, a frog comes out and answers the door. He receives a letter from that fish, and um, the letter is um, for the Duchess, inviting the Duchess to play croquet with the Queen. So, what we find here is that there is this first hint of evolution. Okay, so this Darwinian theory of evolution has been put forward over here, and what we find here is that this evolution of a fish into a human being, or the half human being, plays a role in amazement, plays a role in amazing this person, that is Alice. Okay, so the Alice's first view of the Duchess kitchen is after that. It is from its door, where she observes two bizarre examples of evolution which has actually gone wrong, that is the fish footman and the frog footman. Okay, their names are literal description of the creatures, that is one is half fish and half man, and the other is half frog and half human being. Okay, so the height of both of them are 1 foot in height. Clear? So Carroll's first hint is perhaps uh, found in the initial exchange at the kitchen door, where the fish footman began by producing from under his arm a great letter, nearly as large as himself, and this is handed over to the frog. This sounds, what can you say, perilously close to restating the rules of the Doubtlets. Okay, so I will come to that. What we find here is that this description is important, but what we find here is that this later deals with the croquet. Okay, it deals with the invitation for the Duchess to play croquet with the Queen. After the fish footman leaves, Alice approaches the frog footman, okay, who sits on the ground, staring stupidly at the sky, and Alice knocks at the door, but there will be no one to answer the door because the frog footman is outside. Okay, and the frog footman is supposed to answer the door. So what we find here is that the frog footman explains that now that he is outside, no one else will answer her knock. Okay, since the people who are inside are actually making too much noises. Okay, too much noises, and it is actually difficult for them to hear. He tells her that he plans to sit there for days and seems unsurprised when the door opens a crack and the plate flies out and grazes his nose. Okay, so someone throws a plate from outside, from inside, and he hits his nose, and he is not at all amazed. Okay, so this is actually a manner of idiotic existence where the frog is is dealing with in an idiotic manner. Okay, at the same time, what we find here is that this Duchess, who is inside, is actually dealing with things in such a way where she appears such that she is not the owner of the house, but rather the cook is actually controlling the things. Clear? So what we get here is that this Duchess, Alice opens the door himself, annoyed with this idiotic manner of the frog. She opens the door herself, and she finds that it is a kitchen. She could find the kitchen over there. Okay, Duchess nurses a baby, and she sees a grinning cat sits on the hearth, and a cook who is standing at the stove, and she's dumping paper into the cauldron of soup, and this paper is actually causing the Duchess and the baby to sneeze incessantly. Clear? So this person, this Alice, inquires why the cat is so always grinning, and learns from the Duchess that it is actually a Cheshire Cat. So, wondering aloud why a cat would grin at all, the Duchess insults Alice, telling her that she must not know very much. Okay. Meanwhile, the cook hurls objects randomly at the Duchess and the baby, including irons, fire irons, saucepans, plates, etc., etc. Alice tells the cook to mind herself and attempts to change the subject of conversation by bringing up the art's axis and everything. But the Duchess mishears Alice and thinks that she is actually talking about axes, AXES. Okay, and she spontaneously shouts, chop off her head. Okay, so the Duchess starts to sing nasty lullaby to the baby, roughly tossing it as she sings with it. Upon finishing, she flings the baby at Alice and hurries out of the room to prepare for the croquet with the Queen. Okay, Alice takes the baby outside only to discover that it is a pig. Okay, after she lets the pig trundle off, she encounters the Cheshire Cat again, grinning broadly as it rests on the bough of a tree. After inquiring from the Cheshire Cat where she might go next, the cat tells her that no matter where she goes, she will end up somewhere. Okay, so it is a kind of a riddle, right? Um, while she is moving, there is a kind of a crossroad. Two roads comes up, and Alice is unable to decide which road she should take, and she is asking this from the cat, right? So the Cheshire Cat places Alice with a riddle, a kind of a riddle that if wherever she goes, whichever path she takes, she will end up somewhere. Okay, so the Cheshire Cat arbitrarily suggests that she should visit the Mad Hatter and the March Hare, but warns her that they are both mad. When Alice responds that she does not want to be among mad people, the cat tells her that all people are mad, and if she is in Wonderland, she must be mad too. Okay, so Alice attempts to press a point, but the Cheshire Cat changes the subject, telling Alice that it will see her at the Queen's croquet match later. The Cheshire Cat vanishes and also reappears before fading to nothing but a disembodied grin, leaving Alice to travel onward towards March Hare's house. Okay, so what we find here is that um, when he goes to the house, he discovers that the house is a large one, and Alice consumes a portion of the caterpillar's mushroom and grows to the size of a 2 feet tall. Okay, so what we find here is that the story is quite simple, right? But within these descriptions, as before also, Lewis Carroll is bringing in several qualities or several things which are actually helpful for understanding the current situation that he was in, or the current situation he was describing. Okay, so the as I was telling you about the oracle, Wonderland's uh, kitchen that we have seen or the Duchess kitchen that we have seen, Lewis Carroll is actually creating a parody. Okay, Lewis Carroll is actually creating a parody of Apollo at Delphi, or the Oracle of Delphi. Clear? Which is actually gone wrong badly. Why so? Here, what we find that Carroll uses words in its archaic sense as a fragment or a part of a poem or song, but at the same time the word also implies common meaning of a seizure or convulsion, right? In the ancient temple at Delphi, what it would be done, a prophetess called Phthia sat on a three-legged stool and he inhaled vapor from the great cauldron filled with fragment of broth of laurel leaves and everything, and different kinds of herbs, and the cauldron was tended by a priestess of Hestia, okay, who is the goddess of hearth. remember these things. Okay, so at Delphi, a prophetess called Pythia, Pythia, Pythia used to sit on a three-legged stool, and she used to inhale the vapors from the cauldron, and the cauldron was filled with broth of different kinds of leaves, the laurel leaves, and different kind of narcotic herbs, and that cauldron was tended by a priestess, by the priestess of Hestia, Hestia, and Hestia is the goddess of heart. Okay, and these vapors were the things that inspired Pythia to speak in tongues, and from these utterance came the enigmatic riddle, or the riddling verses, or the prophetic feats of the oracle. Okay, or the prophecies of oracle that would come from this, uh, what can you say, this uh, but this inhalation, okay, these vapors. Clear? So this parody is being created in Wonderland, in Wonderland's kitchen, where the Duchess is actually sitting on a three-legged stool, who is inhaling the smoke and paper from the great cauldron filled with noxious broth. Okay, so the cauldron and hearth was tended by the cook. So these vapors of smoke and paper inspire the Duchess to utter nonsensical riddling verses that are more like the fits of rage than prophecies. Okay, so what we find here is that this kitchen description is actually a parody of the Oracle of Delphi, and that is why I was talking about the Oracle of Delphi in the beginning of my class today. So what we find here is that the Duchess and the cook have completely opposite temperaments. Okay, completely opposite temperaments, which is related to a spiritual or inspiring priestess of Apollo and the gentle caring priestess of Hestia, and yet the Duchess is comparable to Pythia in many ways. Okay, so the Duchess and the cook was completely in temperament than the spiritual priestess of Apollo and the priestess of Hestia. What we find here is that the Duchess is still comparable to the uh, priestess of Apollo, because the title Duchess suggests a pun for the official name of the ancient Greek high priestess Dadokos. ঠিক আছে, Dadochos. Clear? So it is a pun, and in this chapter only Lewis Carroll had used several puns over here. So what we find here is that Dadokos actually means in Greece the torch bearing priestess. Okay, from Dadokos to Duchess. So this Dadokos used to reveal mysteries. Okay, and similarly the cook and Hestia's priestess are certainly similar in their mutual duties, the duties that they were doing, and tending the hearts in the inner sanctum. Okay, so most significantly what we find here is that the Duchess is a prophetess of all sort, and her baby can easily be interpreted as a manifestation of her predictions. Okay, and even when the Duchess screams pig over her curious, backward, overwhelming child, it does not indeed become a pig. Okay, also if we see, nor is the child pig or pig child allusion arbitrarily. Why? Because the most common offering made by any supplicant at the oracle of Delphi was a pig, and when this sacrificial pig was offered up, it was ceremonially identified as a child of the hearth of Athens or Corinth or any origin that you say. So if you have read your um, Iliad, you will see that there are several offerings were made to Apollo, though not at the Oracle of Delphi, but several offerings were made of pigs, right? So this offering about or this link about pigs is also important in showing that this person is clearly following the tradition or the mythological symbols, that is Lewis Carroll is following the mythological symbols in order to showcase this kitchen as a kind of prophetic space similar to that of the Oracle of Delphi, but he is actually parodying. Okay, so beyond these allusions of the Delphic oracle and to the classical history and mythology, uh, Carroll's contemporaries would have recognized the contemporary events that have led him to satirize this episode in Duchess of or the Duchess's Kitchen. Okay, so what is that? In Oxford, there was a temple of the Oracle of Delphi and also the Duchess Kitchen in the most easily identified landmarks. Okay, so Christchurch Kitchen, actually Christchurch's great kitchen, and which was built by Cardinal Wolsey during the reign of Henry the Eighth, I think Henry the Eighth. It was considered one of the ancient wonders of Christchurch, and um, for most of its history, it had massive hearth and roasting entire pigs within it. Okay, and like the Duchess's kitchen was poorly ventilated and frequently filled with smoke. Similarly, the Christchurch kitchen was also doing that. Right. So what we find here is that he is actually parodying not just the Oracle of Delphi, but also he is satirizing the kitchen of Christchurch, okay, which was a poor ventilated space which was made for people in a way where they would actually deal with such things like cooking an entire pig totally. So what we find here is that he is bringing in historical events, historical allusions over this place in order, in this famous Oxford evolution debate and everything. He is also putting in uh, the questions over the leading confrontations that were happening. What is that? In 1860, Wilberforce, a person, took a leading role in a historic event in the intellectual history, which is comparable to the confrontation between Galileo and the Pope over the nature of the universe and everything. This was this famous Oxford evolution debate. Okay, this evolution debate in which the anti-evolution Wilberforce locked horn with the pro-evolution Thomas Henry Huxley. Okay, and as you know that the evolution theory of God did not created man, but human beings were created out of apes and everything, was not taken very uh, seriously, was not taken in a good way, because this all these things, these anti-evolution theories are being put up. Okay, the evolution theory that was put up by Darwin, that was clearly rejected by several people. Okay, so the Duchess's cook is based on the leading anatomist of those times, and it was Sir Richard Owen, okay, who served as this bishop's advisor. But what we find here is that much of Owen's irritation um, is that he cooked up the anti-evolution arguments for Wilberforce. Okay, Wilberforce was the face, but Richard Darwin was creating all these anti-evolution techniques or the theories. So, Owen's position in Darwin's theories are coherently to be argued, right? So, what we find here is that this evolution or this portrayal of evolution, like half fish, half man, half frog, half man, and the baby becoming pig or the pig baby, is actually a critique of what is happening in this uh, whole universe. In Darwin, Owen, or Wilberforce, all of them had a common enemy. Okay, so what we find here is that the common enemy, if you say, is Darwin. Okay, so however, Owen was no friend of the bishop, was as likely to be dispute with Wilberforce as with Darwin. Okay, so what we find here is that in his fantastic creation of Kitchen of Creation, Carroll has the cook and the duchess arguing about the contents of the mad biological soup. Okay, in this kitchen oracle, evolution has gone berserk. Okay, how? Because the fish, frog, footmen who are in livery seems to have just stepped out of the primordial ooze. Okay, a constantly shape-shifting baby appears to demonstrate survival of the fittest by preferring beatings to affection. And the strangest of all is that Alice attempts to nurse the child, result in a reverse form of evolution, that is, from a boy into a pig. Before that, she was thinking that it is a boy, but unfortunately, or fortunately to say, it turns out to be a pig, right? So what we find here is that this surreal transformation is a typical Carolinian riddle and charade. Okay, so why this is so? This is because this surreal transformation of the typical Carolinian transformation riddle and charade, Carroll is playing with the word chain. Okay, what is this word chain game? He himself has invented the doublets, as I told you a bit before also. Voice is cracking. Let's not go into that doublet game now. But what we find here is that this evolution of man from ape has supplied the answer. Okay, ape or man. So what we find here is that all this description is about the existence of human beings. But the most important section of this chapter is the, what can you say, the uh, Cheshire Cat. Okay, how it is important or why it is important? Because of its saying or because of its idea about the happenings of the Wonderland. Okay, how it is important? It is important because the Cheshire Cat's ability to vanish and reappear from head to tail and back again. In fact, in his introduction to his collection of doublets, Carroll provides the readers with this description. Okay, so why this is so? This cat, as I have told you before also, this cat or anyone or anything that is present will have a counterpart in the real life, right? So this Cheshire Cat is Reverend Dr. Edward Bower Pusey. Okay, EDWARD BOUVERIE Pussy. Okay, so what we find here is that Pussy was an ecclesiastical person and a political focus of the ultra conservatism act of Oxford. Okay, and the Cheshire Cat was the Duchess's cat. So Pussy was nominally under the authority of the Oxford Duchess. Okay, not the Duchess of this person, not the Duchess of Wonderland. So Pussy and Wilberforce, the person that I have described before, was the two most influential figures in this Anglican Church of Oxford. Okay, as a friend of Carroll's High Church father from his own student years, this Christchurch, Pussy awarded through the old system of privilege and patronage the young Charles Dodson a lifelong position in Christchurch before he had even achieved his bachelor's degree. So, in real life, this Pussy, who is the Cheshire Cat in Wonderland, had actually helped Dodson, that is Lewis Carroll, a lifelong position in Christchurch, even before he has got his bachelor's degree. So, and here also what we find that the Cheshire Cat is guiding Alice into finding out or into dealing with what she is or what this whole story is. At the same time, what we find here is that this Carol's description or description of this Cheshire Cat also has this allusion to the Sphinx of Delphi. You have read um, in your Oedipus, okay, Oedipus the king. So this mythological allusion in this chapter is revisited again, okay, where you have seen that the Sphinx used to ask riddles or place riddles, right? And the story of Alice also is faced with adventures. The Sphinx is closely linked with the Oracle of Delphi in the myth and in history also. So, the Sphinx would turn up and question people. Similarly, this Sphinx and Wonderland's Cheshire Cat are linked because in classical mythology, the Sphinx, like the Cheshire Cat, poses riddles to unwary travelers at a fork in the road. Most famously, as I said just now, it was encountered by Oedipus, who actually met his tragic fate afterwards. But in an attempt to change that fate, his mother was abandoned. Oh, whatever. I am not going into that. So what we find here is that similarly, in Alice, in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Alice is confused about her own identity, right? And finds that she cannot make fully informed choices that will permit her to control her fate and everything. Despite her best efforts, she cannot save the abused baby from its fate of becoming a pig. And like Oedipus's mother, she abandons the pig child in the wilderness. So that is why I am saying that all this thing uh, is related to it. So what we find here, just as Oedipus encountered the riddling Sphinx at a fork in the road, Alice encounters her riddling Cheshire Cat at a similar junction. Okay, she discovers that no matter which road she chooses to take, she will end up at the same position because both paths lead to the same tea party. Okay, and the worst fate was to greet Oedipus at the end of his journey. So, by means of his allusions to the Delphic oracle, Lewis Carroll was attempting to make a final point about the Oxford. The ancient Delphic oracle, inspired by the sun gods and the celestial fires, induced divine prophecy, whereas in Wonderland, oracles domestic fire brought about sneezing fits. Okay, তাহলে কি বলতে চাইছে এখানটা? বলতে চাইছে যে ওরাকেল অফ ডেলফিতে তোমাকে হচ্ছে ইন্সপায়ার করছেন ডিভাইন প্রফেসি দিয়ে, যেখান থেকে তোমার লাইফ চেঞ্জ হয়ে যাচ্ছে। কিন্তু ওয়ান্ডারল্যান্ডে সেটাকে প্যারোডি করছে কী করে? সেটা হচ্ছে দেখাচ্ছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি এই ওরাকেলগুলো কি, ওরাকেলগুলো আর কিছুই না এই ওয়ান্ডারল্যান্ডে, সেটা হচ্ছে ডোমেস্টিক ফায়ার। ওকে, অ্যান্ড যে কুকারি যেটা বা টেম্পল যেটা, সেটা হচ্ছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি কিচেন টেম্পল। Actually, Carroll is in view of the Oxford's liberal academic system. Okay, he frequently described the reforms to modernize and standardize the teaching at the university was replacing scholarship with a very base form of cookery. Okay, so um, also we can try to equate the Cheshire Cat with Socratic cat or Socrates, because if you know Socrates' life, he used to ask questions. Socrates is the wisest mortal man, and what we find here is that Socrates gained the reputation by questioning everyone and everything. Okay, similarly the Cheshire Cat has similar inquiring nature. So Socrates proudly described himself as a gadfly provoking the Athenian state like a lazy horse into action. In this, he is comparable to the Cheshire Cat, whose floating head in the royal garden provokes everybody, including the king and the queen, and of hearts as the heads of the state. Socrates was sentenced to be executed, and so is the Cheshire Cat. Okay, so what we find here is that Socrates might easily be said to resemble the Cheshire Cat. However, Carroll most closely links Cheshire Cat to Socrates through his discussion with Alice about the nature of madness and dreams. This discussion is derived from Plato's and Socrates' Socratic dialogue, Theaetetus. Okay, so let's not go into Socratic dialogue now, but what we find here is that this mad description, this mad existence, or this suggestion that he gives, okay, the Cheshire Cat, the suggestion that he gives is very very important about your own existence. জস্মিন দেশে যদাচার, ঠিক আছে, এটা আমাদের ইয়েতেও বলা আছে। কি বলছে এখানটায়? যে অ্যালিস তো এখন নিজের সাইজ কন্ট্রোল করতে পারে, রাইট, বাট ইন অর্ডার টু exist in this society you need to act as the society is. Clear? So Cheshire Cat explains to Alice that madness is the chief characteristics of the residents of Wonderland, and in order to live in this Wonderland you have to be mad. In order to exist at all in Wonderland, one must accept its inherent irrationality. Okay, so the Cheshire Cat reasons that in order to accept this irrationality at all, one must be mad. ঠিক আছে, তুমি যেখানটায় পাগল সেই জায়গা ছাড়া, যে জায়গায় পাগল সেখানটায় তো তুমি ভালো হয়ে থাকতে পারবে না। What will actually happen? It will actually make you a person who has not been forced to live in those circumstances. Okay, the Cheshire Cat reasons that in order to accept this irrationality at all, one must be mad. Alice's unfledging curiosity makes her mad in the Cheshire Cat's eyes, since it characterizes her unique and illogical approach to Wonderland's natives. The Cheshire Cat uses the word mad, which puns with the word made, M-A-D-E. Since everything that is present in this Wonderland is fabricated and everything is made up, Alice's willingness to venture into this own dreams means that she herself is similarly fabricated. Okay, so the Cheshire Cat understands that Wonderland and all the inhabitants exist as a figment of Alice's dream, and dreaming imagination. So what is important? It is important because this আমরা সবাই পাগল, এটা হচ্ছে কথা। কেউ টাকার জন্যে পাগল, কেউ অন্য কিছুর জন্যে পাগল, কেউ ক্ষমতার জন্যে পাগল, কেউ ভালোবাসার জন্যে পাগল, আমরা সবাই হচ্ছে পাগল, ঠিক আছে? সো দিস ইজ আ ক্রিটিক অফ দ্য সোসাইটি দ্যাট ইজ বিং প্রেজেন্টেড ওভার হিয়ার। ওকে, সো whether you are Alice or whether you are Mad Hatter, you are in the same plane. Okay, so in order to live, in order to be in a place where you are to survive, in order to survive in this place, you should be like those people, those situation, else you will not be able to exist over there. Clear? So you need to evolve yourself not just physically but mentally, and this story is also about making the child, that is Alice, learn what is actually happening. Okay, how you have to deal with the modern society or the reality. তোমরা এখন এইখানটায় সে একটা ফিগমেন্ট নিয়ে, তার মাইন্ডের ফিগমেন্ট, ড্রিম নিয়ে হচ্ছে কথা বলছে, ড্রিম এর ওয়ার্ল্ডে যেখানটায় কি সমস্ত কিছু হচ্ছে পাগল পাগল, রাইট? কিন্তু রিয়ালিটিটা কিন্তু আরও ম্যাডেনিং। তোমাকে কেউ কেন কেস খাওয়াবে তুমি নিজেও জানো না, যে কোনো সময় যে কেউ কেস খাইয়ে দিতে পারে, right? So what we find here is that this description is being done in order to deal with things or help people learn to make themselves understand what is going to happen. Okay, so what we find here is that Alice যেরকম করে নিজের ফিজিক্যাল অ্যাট্রিবিউটটাকে বা ফিজিক্যাল সাইজটাকে কন্ট্রোল করতে পারে, সিমিলারলি সে যদি নিজের মাইন্ডটাকেও কন্ট্রোল করতে পারে তাহলে হচ্ছে সে এইখানটায় এক্সিস্ট করতে পারবে। সেটাই হচ্ছে দেখানো, সেটাই হচ্ছে বলার, সেটাই হচ্ছে শেখাচ্ছে চেশায়ার ক্যাট। ওকে, অর অ্যাডভাইস করছে চেশায়ার ক্যাট। ওকে, লেটস এন্ড ইট হিয়ার।